Hello and welcome to another Team Primetime tutorial. I'm Miss V, and in this video I will be teaching you how to make a cotton face mask to protect yourself from getting sick. Firstly, you need cotton fabric. If you don't have loose fabric, you can use a cotton pillowcase or a t-shirt. Just make sure that the tag says that it's 100% cotton. If you don't have interfacing, we will be using extra cotton fabric. You're going to need a few other things like elastic. If you don't have elastic, you can use stretched out hair ties and cut them on their seams. New ones will work. The face masks might be just a bit tighter. Thread, I match mine since I can, but any color thread will work. A needle to hand sew, scissors, a pencil or something to mark your fabric, pins if you have them. If you can sew with a machine, I recommend it as it speeds up the process. And you'll need measuring tape or a ruler. If you have bendable wire, it helps secure the mask more firmly. Pipe cleaners work as well. And a needle nose plier to cut and bend the ends of the wire. Also paper to make a pattern or to print one out. I drew my pattern by hand, but there's a PDF link for you to print it out on computer paper. If you don't have a printer, the PDF will give you measurements to draw out the pattern. I have a cutout pattern ready to use. To begin the project, lay your pattern piece on your fabric. You're going to need 2 pieces per layer of mask, so I have my fabric doubled up so I can cut 2 pieces at once. Pin the pattern or hold it in place and trace it with a pencil or marking tool. You'll need 2 more trace pieces, or 3 if you don't have interfacing. This will make the mask nice and sturdy. Cut out all your pieces and make sure they are aligned. You'll sew on the long curved edge, leaving a 1/4 seam allowance. If you don't know how to use a sewing machine or don't have one, I recommend using a back stitch, as it is very sturdy stitch for beginners, as you don't have a steady hand yet, and it will create a more secure hold than a straight stitch. But you do what you feel comfortable with. There are lots of tutorials online showing different sewing stitches. I go ahead on my machine, and you can see it is much faster than hand sewing. Always remember to cut off excess threads while you work. It is a pain to do so at the end when they are harder to see. Once all 4 pieces are stitched down the center seam, take one of the pieces and fold over the edge 1/2 inch twice to create a hem. Pin them in place or iron them to keep them in place. This is going to become a filter pocket, so you can add a filter to your mask if you want. Sew it down along the folded edge of the hem to hem it down. If you're using interfacing, it helps to cut notches out of the seam allowance so it can bend better. Just don't cut through what you've sewn. You'll be putting the top piece's raw edge, so the seam edge, against the bottom piece's clean edge. Place the seam so they are centered and pin the corners and center seams so they align on both pieces, while flattening down the seam allowances. Next, you will take your pocket piece and put the clean sides of the seam against each other. Pin the seams together, flattening the allowances again. The hem pieces are shorter, so pin the end corners down while working with the contour of the mask. Next, you'll pin the last cotton piece on top of the pocket piece, with the seam allowance facing out towards you. Pin the corners down, and then readjust the pins from the hem piece so they are visible on the top layer. Once pinned, you can sew the top and bottom edge. This will help make adding the elastic easier. So for the elastic hair tie, just cut it down the glue seam. Remember, a stretched out one works out much better, but use what you have. But for an actual elastic, you need to measure it. You'll need 2 6-inch pieces. Once cut, put the elastic between the 2 middle layers as seen on screen. Pin in place and repeat on the other side. Next, you can stitch down one side and part of the second side. You need to leave a gap so you can pull the mask inside out. So only stitch down the second side from the corners to about 1 inch from the corner to leave a decently sized gap. Make sure that the elastic is sewn down. Now, using the eraser end of a pencil, you can flip the mask inside out through the gap. Be gentle, as you don't want to pump any seams. If you don't have wire, you would start pinning down the edges, so you can skip the next step. But if you do have wire, line the wire up to the top edge and cut it to size with the pliers. Then fold the edges so they are rounded. This will prevent the wire from poking through the fabric. Next, bend the wire in half to find the center and then unfold it. Place it between your fabric through the opening. Get it as close to the edge as possible and pin it in place. I would highly recommend hand sewing it down if you are new to machine sewing, as there is a high chance you will sew through the wire and break your needle on your machine. Once the wire is stitched into place, you will need to do a top hem around the rest of the piece to sturdy the mask, as well as close the gap from the side. The easiest way to do this is by simply pulling the corners out on that side, as the stitched corners help create a guideline for you to fold over the hem. Pin the edges. Now just sew around the unhemmed edges. Cut any remaining strings. And now you have a face mask with a filter pocket. I'm Miss V, and thanks for watching.